Today we're going to continue working with fractions, but we're going to in fact review something that you've probably seen in your earlier studies, and that is the concept of what we call an improper fraction. So we've done a lot of groundwork so far with talking about fractions, talking about what they represent and how to kind of work with them a little bit. And we specifically said that fractions most of the time are really used to describe when we have something less than 1, when we have a fractional part of some whole object, right? So in this section we're talking about improper fractions, and let me ask you a question. What do you think the word improper means? Well, it means something that's not quite right, or something that's not quite appropriate, or something like that. And so when you have an improper fraction, it's a fraction that looks a little bit odd, frankly, is what it really means. And so let's go ahead and write down what an improper fraction is, and then we'll give you some examples so that you can identify them. So here we have an improper fraction. It's a very simple definition. An improper fraction has a larger numerator than denominator. And I know that that seems a little bit weird, but let's just dive into it and see if we can figure out why improper fractions are kind of neat. All right, so let's take an example of something that's not improper, for instance, just to kind of get started. Let's look at a regular old fraction. This is not an improper fraction. This is a regular old fraction of something that we have looked at time and time again, and this is the fraction 1/2. And we've done this enough times, but just to quickly review, what this means is you take an object, let's say we have a candy bar here, and we cut it into 2 pieces because that's the bottom number. And then we take this candy bar and we only actually have one of the pieces, or let's say we give one away. And in that case, we would have given away 1/2 of the candy bar. And this is a regular fraction. Now let's say, what if we have a fraction that looks something like this? 3/2. The way you say this is 3/2. So here we have 1/2, that means 1 out of 2 pieces. And here we have 3/2. So this is what we call an improper fraction because it has a larger numerator, that means top number, than the denominator, that means the bottom number. So the numerator, the top of the fraction, is actually bigger or larger than the bottom of the fraction. So it's a little bit improper. Most fractions that we see aren't like that. Most of them are like 1/2 or 2/3 or 3/4, where the top number is always smaller. So then you have to ask yourself, right, what does this mean if I have 3/2 of something? I mean, I understand if I take 1/2 of a pizza, I take the pizza, I cut it into 2 pieces, and then I give 1 piece to my friend, and then I say I've given him 1/2 of that pizza. But what does it mean when I have something over 2, but the top number is actually bigger than the bottom number? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense at first. All right, let's draw a picture and see if we can understand what this actually means. When you have the number 3/2, you're still looking at it in the same way. The first thing you do is you look at the bottom number. So let's take a candy bar again. Let's just make sure it's the same size as the one that we had before, roughly, just so we can kind of compare them. So we have a candy bar, let's say, and we cut it into 2 pieces. So let's go ahead and cut this guy into 2 pieces again. Now in the top example, this means that we have only 1/2, so we only actually had one of the 2 pieces. But here it's saying we cut something into 2 pieces, but I actually have 3 pieces. And that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But let's just go through it. So what it's saying is, here is 1/2 of that candy bar, okay? Here is 2/2 of that candy bar. This would be 2 out of 2 pieces, all right? So what this is saying is, since I don't have 1 out of 2 pieces, that would be this. I don't have 2 out of 2 pieces, that's what I've drawn on the board. I actually have 3 out of 2 pieces. So what it means is, not only do I have this, I actually have some more stuff over here. So let me draw another candy bar. And again, I want to cut this one into 2 pieces because my fraction is out of 2. And then here's my 3rd piece. It's very, 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 very important that you understand what we're doing here, all right? When you have a fraction, you look at the bottom number, and that is how many slices you're cutting the thing into, always, okay? So here I have a candy bar, and I'm cutting it into 2 pieces. Now the number on the top tells you how many of those pieces you actually have. So when it's 1/2, I have one of those two pieces. If it were 2 halves, 2 over 2, then I would have 2 out of those 2 pieces. But I actually have 3 out of 2 pieces, which doesn't make a lot of sense at first. But then what you realize is you just need to draw another candy bar here and give me another one of these pieces. So you draw 2 of them, cutting each in half because of the bottom number, and I have 3 out of the 2 pieces. So what you can see here is that here is one candy bar, and here is like another half of a candy bar. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but 3/2 as a fraction really is 1.5 candy bars. It's 1.5 candy bars. So the bottom line I want you to take away from this so far is that when you have an improper fraction, what they mean, what they represent, is when you're trying to describe when you have something greater than 1. And I'll say that again. Improper fractions always mean that you have more than one of something. All right? So that's very, very important, because normally in fractions, when you have 2/3 of a pizza, or 3/4 of a pizza, or 1/8 of a pizza, or anything like that, it's always representing when you have less than a whole pizza. In this case, anytime you have an improper fraction, it's always representing when I have more than a whole pizza, or whatever it is I'm talking about. That's why it's a little bit improper. Okay? So let's do another example. I think you will start to understand a little bit more as we do just a couple of additional examples. Let's say we have 5/3 of something. And again, it's improper. You can tell immediately because the top number is bigger than the bottom. So that's really the most important thing from this lesson. But if we wanted to try to draw this and figure out what I have, then let's do it in terms of our candy bars again. So now we have a candy bar. Let's say we have a bigger candy bar. But since the bottom number is 3, we're dividing this into 3 pieces. All right? So if I were to take away from this candy bar the first piece, that would be 1 out of 3 pieces. So this represents 1/3 of the candy bar. If I take another piece away, this represents 2/3 of a candy bar. If I take the third piece, so I take all 3 pieces that I cut, it's 3 out of 3 pieces, or 3/3 of the candy bar. But I don't have 3 out of 3 pieces. I have 5 out of 3 pieces. So I need to keep going and kind of taking more candy. And the only way I can do that is to grab another candy bar. And again, I need to cut this into 3 equal pieces because of the way our fraction is set up. So if this is 3 pieces, then here is the 4th piece, and here is the 5th piece. So I have 5 out of 3 pieces. So what it's 5 out of 3 pieces, when you say it like that, doesn't make a lot of sense. But what you really need to realize is when it's 5/3, it's representing 1 whole candy bar plus a fractional part. That's what the improper part of it is really representing. So to recap, regular fractions like 1/2, 1/3, the regular proper fractions, where the smaller number's on top, they always represent things smaller than 1. You know, like cutting this into 3 pieces and having 1/3 of a marker. That's a proper fraction. If it's improper, then the top number's bigger, and it always means that you have more than one of something. That's what it means. All right, so to get a little bit of rapid fire practice with this, let's jump over and see if we can quickly identify if a fraction is proper or not. So let's say, here's the first problem, 9/10. And I ask you, is this proper or improper? The top number is smaller, so this is proper. So this is a proper fraction. So this is the kind of thing you might be asked to do for your homework or on a test or something. What if you have 10/9? That means 10 out of 9 pieces. So I have more than one of something. And because the top number is bigger, this is called improper. Okay? Now, what if I have 5/2? Is this improper or proper? Top number is bigger, so this is improper. So you can see once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. And this whole process, it works the same if you have big or small numbers. What if you have 37/50? So 37/50ths. Is this proper or improper? Well, the top number is smaller, so this is proper. This means you cut a pizza into 50 slices, and then you only take 37, so I have less than a whole pizza in my hands. Now, what if I have, for my next one, what if I have 17 out of 11 pieces? That means I have more pieces than I originally cut to begin with top number is bigger, so this is improper. And then the final example that we will have here is 82 over 81. Doesn't matter how close the numbers are, the top number is bigger here, so this is improper. Improper. So that about does it for this lesson. The most important thing for you to understand is that when you have fractions, most of the time you're using them to describe when you have less than one whole object, like half of a pizza or 1/3 of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But if the top number is bigger, it looks a little bit odd, and that's why we call it improper. But all it really means is I have more than one whole item. So it usually means I have one whole object plus a fractional part from another second object that I had to grab. And I've tried to explain how that works here. So make sure you understand this, and then make sure you feel comfortable and confident with it. I hope you've enjoyed